I knew something was wrong the moment the sun rose that morning, because for the first time in my 70 years, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. That empty quiet in my chest felt louder than any argument I'd ever had with my family. And Lord knows, we'd had plenty. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers trembling just a little, listening to the stillness of a house that used to overflow with laughter, music, and the heavy footfalls of the children I raised. Now it echoed like a museum no one visited anymore. It's a strange kind of pain when a home turns into a reminder instead of a comfort. I whispered to myself, maybe they wouldn't even notice. And that thought hurt more than anything. The truth is, things didn't fall apart overnight. No, baby, families crack slow, like ice at the edge of a lake. And my crack started the day my son married Alicia, that daughter-in-law of mine, with a smile so sweet it hid how sharp her words could be. I still remember the first Thanksgiving after their wedding. She sat at my table, criticizing the sweet potato pie recipe I'd used since my mama taught it to me at 14. She said my kitchen was outdated, my traditions old-fashioned, and my home a little too much like a time capsule. My son, Marcus, just laughed. "Ma, you know how she is. Don't take it personal." But how do you not take your own erasure personal? That morning, as I folded 2 dresses into an old suitcase, I let those memories swirl around me like dust in sunlight. Every little moment added up. The ignored phone calls, the last-minute "we're not coming" texts, the canceled Sunday dinners, the way Marcus stopped visiting without explanation. But what truly broke me, what pushed me to walk out, was the conversation I overheard just last night. I'd called Marcus, again, hoping maybe this time he'd pick up. I wanted to hear his voice, that's all, just something small to remind me I still had a place in his life. But he answered on speakerphone, and before he realized the call hadn't disconnected, I heard Alicia's voice, sharp as cut glass. "Your mama needs to stop depending on you for every little thing. She's draining you, Marcus. Can't she see she's old now? She needs to learn to be on her own." On her own, at 70 years old, after raising that boy through sickness, poverty, and more heartache than he'd ever know. And do you know what he said? "Yeah, you're right." I sat there on the cold kitchen tile, phone still in my hand, listening to my only son agree that I was a burden. Phew, baby, the kind of pain that gives you. It's like someone wringing out your heart with bare hands. So that morning, I zipped up my little suitcase, put on my softest sweater, the lavender one my late husband used to say made me look like spring, and walked through the quiet house one last time. I touched the family photos on the wall, letting my fingers glide over the glass, pictures of Marcus as a baby, of my husband holding him up to the summer sun, of birthday parties, graduations, Christmas mornings, memories glued to the wall, even if the people in them had drifted from me. At the front door, I hesitated. Was I really doing this? Was I really walking away from the only life I'd ever known? But then another voice inside me, one that sounded a whole lot like my younger, unbroken self, said, "You deserve to matter to somebody, and if they won't see your worth, you go find a place that will." So I stepped out, pulled the door shut behind me, and for the first time in years, the house felt smaller than I did. What none of them knew, not Marcus, not Alicia, not a single soul in my family, was that I wasn't leaving out of anger. I was leaving because sometimes the heart needs to go missing just to be noticed. Little did I know. No one would notice at all. You ever step out into the world with a suitcase in your hand and a prayer in your chest, not knowing where you're going but knowing you can't stay where you've been? That was me, standing on my porch at dawn, the chill nipping at my cheeks like it was trying to wake me up from a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was my life. I walked down the steps slowly, each one feeling heavier than the last. My knees complained the way old knees do, but I ignored them. My heart was making more noise than my body anyway. The birds were just starting to chirp, singing their little morning songs like nothing in the world was wrong. Funny how nature don't pause for nobody's heartbreak. I stood by the curb waiting for the rideshare I'd ordered because the bus stop felt too lonely, and I didn't trust myself not to turn around if I sat there too long. The driver pulled up, a kind-eyed man who looked like he'd seen a few sunrises of his own. "You headed to the station, ma'am?" he asked, stepping out to take my suitcase. "Yes, baby," I said softly. "The bus station." I climbed in and settled against the window as he pulled away, the house shrinking behind me until it slipped out of view. I thought maybe I'd feel panic or regret, but what I felt was something else entirely. Emptiness. Like someone had scooped out a part of me and left a hollow space. Halfway to the station, the driver glanced back at me in the mirror. "You traveling alone?" I nodded. "Mm-hmm. Sometimes life pushes you to travel lighter than you planned." He hummed like he understood, and we drove in silence after that, but inside my head, the memories played loud. I thought about Marcus at 10 years old, bringing me dandelions from the backyard, telling me, "Mama, you're the prettiest lady on the whole street." I thought of how he used to run home from school just to tell me every little thing that happened. How he'd sit at my kitchen counter and eat cornbread straight from the pan. Where did that boy go? Where had I lost him? It's a strange wound, one your own child gives you. Not a sharp stab, not a quick slice. No. It's dull. A slow ache. The kind of pain that becomes part of your bones. When we reached the station, I stepped out into the smell of diesel and old coffee. A few people hurried past me. Young folks with backpacks, a couple arguing under their breath, a woman rocking a crying baby. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere with purpose. And there I was, 70 years old, starting from scratch like a runaway. Inside, I bought a one-way ticket to a small town 2 states over. Didn't know much about it, just remembered driving through it with my late husband once. He'd said, "Baby, this looks like the kind of place where your soul could breathe." I held on to that memory like a lifeline. While waiting for my bus, I took a seat in the corner where the morning sun slipped through the dirty windows. I rested my hands in my lap, staring at the phone in my purse. A tiny part of me, maybe the last hopeful corner of my heart, thought Marcus might call. Maybe he noticed. Maybe he finally wondered where I was. So I pulled my phone out. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing. That silence. That silence was louder than any goodbye. I leaned back in my chair, eyes stinging, telling myself not to cry in public. Ain't nothing dignified about sobbing in a plastic seat at a bus station, but the tears came anyway, quiet, stubborn things that slid down my cheeks no matter how hard I tried to blink them away. "Ma'am, you okay?" a woman asked gently. I nodded, wiping my face. "Yes, sugar, just learning how to let go." And Lord, letting go hurts. The bus finally pulled in with a loud hiss, and as people started lining up to board, I stood slowly, gripping my purse a little harder. I whispered under my breath, "Well, here goes nothing." And just like that, I stepped into the next chapter of a life I never planned for. I felt that bus rumble beneath me like an old heartbeat, steady, familiar, and a little too loud in the quiet moments. The moment I settled into my seat by the window, the world outside seemed to blur into streaks of early morning light. And baby, that light hurt my eyes, not because it was bright, but because it reminded me of all the mornings I used to cook breakfast for a family that no longer needed me. I pressed my palm against the cool window, watching the city fade behind us. A part of me wondered, was I running away, or was I finally walking toward myself for the first time in decades? The bus was half full. A young man in a hoodie slept with his head tilted against the glass. A woman with anxious hands kept checking her phone like she was waiting for news she didn't want. A couple whispered arguments sharp as needles. Everyone had a story. Everyone carried some kind of weight. And there I was, 70 years old, carrying mine like a cracked suitcase with no wheels. As the miles stretched out before us, my thoughts drifted back to Marcus, my baby boy who once cried if I left him at kindergarten 5 minutes too long, the same boy who clung to my leg during thunderstorms. The same boy who used to stay up late watching old church concerts with me, singing off-key but trying his best. I whispered to the window, "Where did you go, Marcus? Where did my son disappear to?" It's a question only a mother can understand, a question that feels like an echo in an empty room. The bus hit a bump, pulling me from my thoughts. The driver announced we'd be stopping at a small roadside diner in 20 minutes. My stomach growled right on cue. It had been hours since I'd eaten. Nerves can make a woman forget she's hungry, but they can't make her forget she's human. When we finally stopped, I stepped off the bus and stretched my stiff legs. The diner looked like something out of a faded postcard, peeling paint, flickering neon sign, a jukebox inside playing an old blues tune that sounded like Heartbreak with a rhythm. I walked in, the warm smell of bacon and coffee wrapping around me like a quilt. A waitress with tired eyes and a kind smile approached. "Morning, sweetheart. Sit wherever you like." Sweetheart. Funny how a single soft word from a stranger can feel like a small patch on a torn heart. I took a booth by the window. When she returned with a menu, I waved it off politely. "Just some coffee and a biscuit, baby." "You got it," she said, patting my hand before walking off. As I waited, I noticed an older gentleman sitting across the room. Silver hair, strong shoulders, a weathered face that had seen storms of its own. He kept glancing my way, almost like he recognized me from somewhere. But I knew better. Loneliness can make strangers look familiar. My coffee arrived, and as I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, I let myself breathe for what felt like the first time in weeks. But peace is a fragile thing, easily broken. And mine shattered the moment I heard two people at the next booth whispering. "She said her mama keeps calling, but she ain't got time to deal with all that. Says older folks need to stop depending on their kids." The young woman's voice was sharp, annoyed. Her friend replied, "Parents can be needy. You gotta set boundaries." Something inside me twisted. Boundaries. That word. It had become a weapon in today's world. I sipped my coffee slowly, refusing to let my hands shake. Lord knows I didn't need another stranger's conversation stirring up my grief. But grief doesn't wait for an invitation. A few minutes later, as I stood to leave, the waitress came back with a small paper bag. "These are for you," she whispered. "Biscuits for the road, on the house." I blinked at her, surprised. "Baby, why you doing that?" She shrugged, smiling softly. "You just look like you needed a little something extra today." Her kindness cracked something open inside me, a warmth I hadn't felt in too long. When I got back on the bus, clutching that little paper bag, I told myself quietly, "You ain't invisible, not yet." But somewhere deep inside, I still wondered if anyone back home had noticed I was gone. I knew the moment the bus pulled back onto the highway that something inside me had shifted, just a little, but enough for me to feel it. Maybe it was that waitress's kindness. Maybe it was the warmth of those biscuits in my lap. Or maybe it was simply the truth settling in. I was really gone. Really on my own. Really starting over at 70 years old. But, baby, just because a woman leaves doesn't mean the hurt stays behind. As the bus hummed along, I watched the landscape change, city edges giving way to long, open fields, then quiet neighborhoods thick with trees that looked like they held secrets. I leaned my head against the window and closed my eyes, trying to rest. But rest wouldn't come. Not when my mind kept replaying the same memory over and over. Alicia's voice, Marcus's silence, my own heart breaking in the middle. "Stop depending on you." Yeah, you're right. Those words felt like needles in my spine, sharp enough to make me sit up straight even now. I saw Marcus's face in my mind, my baby boy who used to swear he'd take care of me forever, the one who promised, "Mama, I'll never leave you lonely." Children make promises with pure hearts, not knowing the world will shape them into someone else entirely. Maybe that's what hurt most. Not that he broke the promise, but that he didn't even remember he made it. My chest tightened. I pressed my hand over my heart like I could keep it from falling apart all over again. About an hour into the ride, an older woman boarded at a small station, a plump little lady with salt and pepper braids and a church hat bigger than her whole face. She struggled with her bags, so I stood and helped her lift them onto the seat beside mine. "Thank you, baby," she said, breathing hard. "These old bones don't cooperate much no more." I chuckled softly. "Mine either, sugar. They do what they can." She settled in and looked at me with curious, warm eyes. "You traveling far?" I hesitated. "Far enough." She hummed knowingly. "Running from something or running to something?" "A little of both, I suppose." She nodded, patting my hand gently. "Ain't no shame in either one." We didn't talk much after that. Sometimes the best company is the kind that doesn't require conversation. She pulled out a cross-stitch pattern and worked quietly, and I stared out the window, soaking in the silence. But then my phone buzzed. My whole body stiffened. Hope, sharp and unexpected, surged up inside me. Was it Marcus? Did he finally notice? Was he calling to say, "Mama, where are you?" I grabbed the phone so fast I nearly dropped it, but when I looked at the screen, it wasn't him. It wasn't anyone from my family. Just a spam message, a meaningless, automated word from a world that didn't know my heart was breaking. I swallowed hard. The disappointment hit me like a wave crashing against a fragile porch railing, loud, sudden, and almost violent in its force. The woman beside me glanced over. "Bad news?" "No," I whispered. "Just not the news I was hoping for." She nodded like she understood more than I said. Some women can read pain like scripture. The sun began sinking low, painting the sky with soft gold. I watched the light stretch across the horizon, warm and wide. Nothing like the cold silence I left behind. I wondered then if maybe God was telling me something. That maybe this journey wasn't punishment, but protection. Or maybe I was just trying to find meaning in a mess that didn't have any. As the bus rolled deeper into the unknown, I held my purse tighter and told myself, "You did the right thing, even if no one notices, even if no one calls. You chose yourself." But baby, choosing yourself don't stop the loneliness. It just teaches you how to carry it. And Lord knows, I was still learning. I didn't realize how long I'd been staring out that window until the sky turned the color of bruised peaches, soft purple, deep orange, fading into a night that felt heavier than the one I'd left behind. Something about dusk always makes a woman think harder than she wants to. Maybe it's the way the world quiets down just enough for the past to speak up. And Lord, my past was loud. The bus slowed as we approached a rest stop in the middle of nowhere. Just a lonely gas station, a row of dim lights, and a vending machine humming like it had seen better days. When the driver announced we'd have 15 minutes, I grabbed my purse and stepped outside, my legs grateful for the stretch. The air was cool, crisp, smelled like pine trees and a hint of rain somewhere far off. People scattered around the stop, a few smokers, a couple of teenagers laughing too loudly, a mother rocking a fussy toddler. Life happening all around me, none of it knowing I'd slipped out of my family's life like an old bookmark falling from a forgotten book. I walked toward the vending machine, not because I needed anything, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I pressed my fingertips against the cold glass, staring at the rows of snacks. Behind me, I heard a soft voice. "You okay, sweetheart?" I turned to see the older church hat lady from the bus standing a few feet away, her eyes warm and patient. The kind of eyes women earn after surviving a whole lifetime of disappointments and still finding the strength to smile. I forced a little laugh. "Why everybody keep asking me that today?" She stepped closer. "'Cause you wearing your hurt on your face, baby. Sometimes we don't even realize." I sighed and leaned against the vending machine. Guess I'm not hiding it as well as I thought. "Pain got a way of seeping through the cracks," she said gently. "But it don't mean you weak. It just means you human." We stood there for a moment, the wind tugging at my sweater. I didn't plan on telling her anything more, but loneliness will open a mouth quicker than courage ever will. "My son," I whispered. "He don't need me no more." She nodded like she'd heard that story before. Children grow up and forget who held their hand through the dark, forget who kept the lights on when life got rough, forget the smell of home they used to run back to. Her words hit me hard, so hard I had to blink back tears. I walked away this morning, I admitted, packed a bag and left. And so far, not a single call, not a single text, not even a, "Mama, where you at?" The woman placed her hand over mine. Her touch was warm, steady. "Baby," she murmured, "sometimes God pulls you out of a place before the people in it realize they should have held tighter." Her words, phew, they slid right through the cracks of my heart and settled deep. Before I could respond, a voice rang out across the parking lot. "Boarding in 2 minutes." The woman squeezed my hand. "Come on now, let's keep moving forward. Backwards don't hold nothing for you." We walked toward the bus together, and for a moment, I swear, just for a heartbeat, I felt less alone. Like maybe the universe had sent that woman to hold me up before I crumbled. Back in my seat, I stared at my phone again. A part of me, small, foolish, stubborn, still hoped for a message. But the screen stayed dark, silent. The bus engine roared to life, and as we pulled back onto the road, a sharp truth settled in my chest. Maybe the people you love the most can forget you the easiest. Maybe that's the part no one warns you about when you're raising babies. One day you might disappear from their world and they won't even look up. I wiped a tear from my cheek before it could fall. The night stretched ahead, long and uncertain. But so was my journey. Night had a way of settling into my bones, making every thought feel heavier, every memory sharper. As the bus rolled through the darkness, its lights flickering across my reflection in the window, I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me, tired eyes, tightened jaw, and a loneliness sitting on my shoulders like a familiar old shawl. But baby, even in the dark, the truth finds you. I shifted in my seat, trying to get comfortable, but my body wasn't having it. Old age don't play fair. It waits until you're already hurting, then gives your joints a little extra something to complain about. I sighed, rubbed my knees, and whispered, "Lord, give me strength," like I'd done 1,000 times before. The woman with the church hat was asleep now, her head bobbing softly with each bump in the road. I envied her peace. Sleep hadn't been my friend in a long time. My mind drifted again, like it always did, to Marcus. I remembered the night he graduated high school. He'd run up to me afterward, that cap crooked on his head, eyes bright as fireworks. "You proud of me, Mama?" he'd asked, breathing hard from excitement. I'd cupped his face in my hands and said, "Baby, I've been proud of you since the day you learned how to walk." Where was that boy now? What happened to the love we used to share so easily? I pressed my fingertips to my temples, willing the ache to ease. But memories don't listen. They just come. A soft voice broke into my thoughts. "Can't sleep either?" I turned to see a young woman, maybe in her late 20s, seated across the aisle, an infant bundled up against her chest. She smiled tiredly, the way new mothers do. I smiled back. "No, baby, my mind's a little too loud tonight." She nodded. "Mine too." "This boy hasn't let me rest in days." She brushed the baby's cheek with the back of her finger. "We're going to stay with my mom a while. I need help." Something inside me tightened. "Mamas can be that for you," I said, my voice softer than I intended. She looked at me carefully. "You headed to see family too?" I swallowed, a thick, bitter swallow. "No, I'm leaving mine behind." She blinked, surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry." I shook my head gently. "Don't be. Sometimes leaving is the only thing left a person can do." The young woman shifted the baby and leaned in just a little. "Did something bad happen?" I let out a breath that felt like it carried years with it. "My son forgot who I was. Forgot I had a heart. Forgot I raised him from scratch." She didn't look away. She didn't pretend not to understand. She just nodded slowly. "Mothers deserve to feel wanted," she whispered. "It scares me sometimes, thinking my son might grow up and, forget." Her fear softened something inside me. "Listen, sugar," I murmured. "You love that baby with everything you got. Sometimes children drift anyway, but love don't go to waste. It just sits in them quiet, waiting for the day they remember." Her eyes filled a little and she mouthed, "Thank you." We sat there for a long time, the hum of the bus filling the spaces between us, and for just a moment I felt like maybe, I still had something left to give the world, even if my own family didn't see it. Around midnight the driver dimmed the lights. The young woman curled up with her baby. The church hat lady snored softly, and I sat there feeling the weight of the night press against my chest. My phone buzzed suddenly. My heart shot up into my throat. I snatched it up so fast I nearly dropped it. Was it Marcus? Did he finally notice? Did he finally say, "Mama, where are you?" But when I looked at the screen, it was a bank alert. Just a balance notification, nothing more. The disappointment hit me so hard I had to close my eyes. For a moment I couldn't breathe. It's one thing to leave, another to realize no one's chasing you. I slipped the phone back into my purse and whispered to myself, "Keep going, 1 mile at a time." Outside, the night rolled on, wide and merciless, and inside, I held myself together by threads. I woke up to the bus shuddering beneath me, the kind of shake that rattles your ribs and tells you you've been asleep longer than you meant to. Dawn was creeping over the horizon, a thin ribbon of pale blue stretching across the sky. Morning light has always been honest. Too honest sometimes. It shines on everything you'd rather keep tucked away. And Lord, that morning, it shined straight onto the parts of me I'd been trying to ignore. My neck was stiff, my knees aching, and my heart, well, that hurt most of all. I sat up slow, rubbing my eyes, and noticed the young woman with the baby was gone. Must have gotten off at some stop during the night. The church hat lady was still there, though, humming a hymn under her breath like she'd been awake since Jesus turned water into wine. She smiled when she saw me stir. "Morning, baby." "Morning," I whispered back. "You sleep any?" "Little bit?" "Not enough." She nodded sympathetically. Pain keeps a woman awake more than coffee ever could. I managed a small smile. "Ain't that the truth?" As the bus rolled through a quiet little town, white picket fences, sleepy diners, children waiting for school buses, I felt something unexpected stir in me. A kind of ache that wasn't from sadness, but from longing. This was the kind of place where families ate breakfast together, where folks knew their neighbors, where children ran around barefoot in the summer, a place that looked like the life I used to have, before silence took over my phone and my son stopped calling me Mama, with tenderness in his voice. I swallowed hard, pressed my forehead to the cool window, and whispered, "Lord, give me something to hold on to." A few miles later, the bus made another scheduled stop. The driver announced a 30-minute break. I gathered my things and stepped outside, letting the cool morning breeze brush against my face. The rest stop sat beside a small lake, the water still as glass. Mist hovered above it like a veil. I walked toward the edge, my chest rising and falling with each breath, slow, thoughtful, shaky. I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle around me. For a moment I felt at peace, but peace is slippery, and mine slipped away the second I heard a notification from my purse. My heart jumped, my hands trembled as I reached for my phone. This time, I didn't even bother telling myself not to hope. I looked at the screen. It was Marcus. A text message. But the relief that washed over me lasted only one heartbeat, just one, because when I opened the message, it wasn't a question or a worry, or even a simple, "You okay?" It was a single line. "Ma, can you send me the login for your Netflix account? Alicia wants to watch something." I felt the air leave my lungs. I stood there, staring at that message, unsure whether to laugh or cry. That boy. My son. He hadn't texted to ask where I was, not to ask if I was safe, not to ask why I hadn't answered his last calls, even though he didn't make any. No, he wanted my Netflix password. Of all the things I thought would break me, I never imagined it'd be something that small. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down on a nearby bench. Tears blurred the screen as I whispered, "Lord, this can't be my life." For a moment, anger flared, hot, sharp, painful, but beneath it was something even heavier. Grief, a grief only a mother could understand. I typed slowly, carefully, because my hands were trembling. "Marcus, do you even know where I am?" I watched the typing bubble appear, disappear, appear again. My heartbeat stalled. Finally, his reply came. "Ma, stop with the drama. Just send the password." Drama, after everything I'd done for him. After all the nights I stayed up when he was sick, all the meals cooked, bills paid, sacrifices made. Drama. The words sliced through me like a razor. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't move. The church hat lady walked over, sitting beside me without saying a word. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't have to. She simply placed her hand over mine and let me cry quietly into the morning air. And baby. I cried. I cried for the little boy Marcus used to be. I cried for the mother I had been. I cried for the woman I had now become. When my tears finally slowed, the woman squeezed my hand gently and murmured, "Baby, sometimes the people you love the hardest will be the ones who show you exactly why you need to love yourself more." Her words settled deep inside me, painful but true. I wiped my face, stood up slowly, and whispered to myself, "I'm not going back, not to that house, not to being invisible." The bus horn sounded, break time was over, and so was something inside me. I climbed back onto that bus with my heart feeling like a patchwork quilt, stitched together in some places, unraveling in others. It's strange how a simple text message, just a few careless words, can knock the breath out of a woman more than any storm life has thrown her way. As I eased into my seat, the world outside the window blurred again. But this time, it felt like my tears were doing the blurring. I wiped my eyes quick before anyone noticed. I've always believed a woman should be allowed to cry, but I also believe she ought to stand up straight afterward. Still, baby. That morning had knocked something loose in me, something deep. The church hat lady looked over, concern soft in her eyes. "You all right, sweetheart?" I nodded, because sometimes nodding is all a woman can do without breaking again. "I will be," I whispered. The bus pulled away from the rest stop, humming its steady tune down the highway. The seats creaked, the air vents whispered, and the low murmur of quiet conversations filled the space between us passengers. Yet inside me? Silence. Heavy, echoing silence. I pulled out my phone one more time. Not because I expected anything different, but because hope is a stubborn old friend. No new messages, no missed calls, just that same Netflix request staring back at me like a cruel joke. I turned the phone face down on my lap. My thoughts drifted back, way back, to when Marcus was just a little boy. How he used to climb into my lap after school, still smelling like crayons and sweat. How he'd rest his head on my shoulder and declare, "Mama, you my best friend." And now my best friend was asking me for a password, not wondering where I was or if I was all right. Lord, life can be cold. The bus slowed as we rolled into another small town, this one lined with red brick buildings, old storefronts, and a diner with a sign that read, "Open 24 hours, even though half the lights were out. We weren't making a stop here, just passing through. But I watched that little town like it held a secret I needed to hear. I wondered what kind of life I'd live to end up here, alone on a bus, leaving behind a home where nobody even looked up when I walked away. I wondered if maybe I'd loved too hard, too long, too blindly. My thoughts were interrupted by a gentle tap on my arm. "Excuse me," a voice said softly. I turned to see a middle-aged man 2 seats back, leaning forward with cautious eyes. I don't mean to intrude," he said, "but I overheard a little earlier, about your son." I stiffened, embarrassed, exposed, raw. But he lifted his hands as if to calm the air. "I just wanted to say, you ain't the only one going through something like that." His voice cracked just a little, and I saw pain flicker across his face. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. Blames me for stuff I didn't even do, and every day, every single day, I think about calling her. But I don't, 'cause I don't want her to tell me I'm bothering her. His confession slipped into the air like a shared secret, heavy but freeing. I swallowed. That kind of hurt don't get easier. He shook his head. No, ma'am, but hearing someone else say it out loud makes a man feel a little less crazy. We shared a sad, knowing smile before he settled back into his seat. The church hat lady murmured a soft prayer under her breath. Maybe for him, maybe for me. Maybe for all the hearts on that bus carrying stories too heavy to speak. The miles rolled by, trees blurred, roads stretched long and unforgiving. But something had changed in me. That text message, it had snapped the last thread, tying me to the illusion that Marcus would suddenly remember the mother who once held his whole world together. I knew then I couldn't go back. Not to that house, not to that silence, not to that life where I was only needed when there was something to take. The bus entered the outskirts of the town I'd been heading to, the place my husband once said felt like a breath for the soul. The sight of it brought a small, unexpected warmth to my chest. Maybe, just maybe, this was where God was leading me all along. A fresh start, a quiet place, a chance to matter to myself again. As we approached the station, I gripped my purse and whispered, "This is it. Keep breathing. Keep walking." Because whether Marcus noticed or not, whether he cared or not, my life wasn't over just because my heart was bruised. It was changing, and so was I. Baby, the moment my feet touched the ground outside that bus station, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long while, air that didn't belong to somebody else's expectations. It slid into my lungs like hope trying to make a comeback. But don't get me wrong, that didn't mean the pain let go of me. Oh no, it clung to me like an old shawl a woman keeps wrapped around her shoulders because she's too used to the weight to set it down. The sky was turning a soft, morning gray when I stepped off the bus, clouds hanging low like the whole town was holding its breath. The station itself wasn't more than a squat little brick building with 2 benches out front and a vending machine humming like it had secrets. A few folks milled around, an old man carrying a fishing pole, a teenager with headphones too big for his head, a mama pushing a stroller while sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. But me? I stood there feeling like a woman who'd washed up on a new shore. "Ma'am, you need help with your bag?" the bus driver called. I shook my head. "Thank you, baby, but I got it." Because even if I didn't believe it yet, I needed to hear myself say it. I tugged my old suitcase behind me and walked toward the edge of the station where a small wooden sign read, "Welcome to Willow Creek. A good place to breathe. Lord." I hoped that was true. As I walked, my mind kept drifting back to the house I'd left behind, the quiet hallways, my cold dinner still sitting in the stove, Marcus's mug in the sink, always mine to wash, and the fortress my daughter-in-law had built inside that house, one cold look at a time. I wondered if she'd even realized I was gone, if she'd gone into the kitchen the next morning and seen my chair empty. Somehow, I doubted it. I crossed the small parking lot toward the main road. Willow Creek wasn't big, but it had charm, the kind that snuck up on you like a warm memory. Little shops with hand-painted signs, flower boxes under windows, and a smell in the air like fresh bread mixed with something sweet. Then I heard a gentle voice behind me. "You look a little lost, sweetheart. First time here?" I turned and found a woman standing near the bus station door. She looked about my age, maybe a little older, with silver curls pinned back under a colorful scarf and a smile that radiated the kind of kindness you don't see much these days. "Yes," I said, exhaling. "First time anywhere that ain't home." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than I was saying. "You visiting someone? Or running from someone?" Her words struck something raw in me. I didn't answer immediately, just lifted my shoulders in a soft shrug. She chuckled lightly. "Ah, must be both then." Her gentle humor cracked the tightness in my chest, and a jittery breath slipped out. Maybe just trying to find a little quiet, a place to think. Well, she said, stepping closer, Willow Creek's a fine place for that. I'm Loretta. She offered her hand. I shook it. I'm Evelyn. Evelyn, she repeated warmly. Now that's a name with grace on it. I smiled despite myself. Loretta pointed down the main road. If you're looking for a place to stay, the Maple Rose Inn is right around that corner. Old owner, big heart, fair prices, and if you need a hot meal, Darla's Diner serves breakfast all day. I felt my eyes sting again, this time not from sadness, but relief. Genuine kindness is rare enough these days that when it finds you, it feels like a blessing poured straight from heaven. Thank you, I whispered. Loretta squeezed my arm gently. We all got our storms, baby. Ain't no shame in finding a place to dry off. As she walked away, I stood there letting her words soak into me. Storms, drying off. Yes, that's what this was. I wasn't running away. I was finding shelter long enough to breathe again. I picked up my suitcase, squared my shoulders, and walked toward the Maple Rose Inn, each step small but steady. And for the first time since leaving that cold, silent house, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't disappeared after all. The Maple Rose Inn looked smaller than I imagined, but cozy, like the kind of place that had seen decades of laughter, heartbreak, and everyday life carried quietly in its walls. The wooden sign creaked in the morning breeze, and a little bell jingled as I pushed open the door. Inside, the air smelled of old wood, lavender, and something sweet I couldn't place, maybe cinnamon. I let my suitcase drop with a soft thud and took a deep breath, letting the scent settle over me like a warm embrace. "Good morning, ma'am," a cheerful voice called out from behind the counter. A woman with curly hair pinned back in a messy bun waved at me, her smile bright enough to lift the morning sun. "You must be Evelyn. I've been expecting you." "Morning," I said softly, my voice cracking just a little. I couldn't remember the last time someone expected me. Not Marcus, not Alicia, not anyone from the family I'd left. "Yes, I'm Evelyn." "Well, you're just in time for breakfast if you want it," she said, flipping a register closed. "And your room is ready. It's small but quiet, and that's what I hear most folks like about it." Quiet. That word hit me harder than I thought it would. For weeks, my life had been a cacophony of voices that didn't care, sounds that didn't comfort, and silence that was deafening. Now, here was quiet, inviting and patient, like a friend who'd been waiting for me without ever demanding I speak. Thank you," I murmured. She led me down a narrow hallway lined with faded photographs, weddings, family reunions, and even a few black and white portraits that looked like they'd been there since the beginning of time. My heart gave a little lurch as I glanced at one photograph, a little girl clutching a kitten, grinning like she had no idea of the world's troubles. I couldn't help but think about Marcus, about how small he used to be, about how life had carried him away from me. The room she gave me was modest: soft bed, a small dresser, a window that overlooked the town's main street, but it felt like a sanctuary. I unpacked slowly, placing my favorite lavender sweater on a chair, tucking my suitcase under the bed, and setting my purse on the dresser. Every little movement felt like a claim on this new space, like saying, "I exist here, I matter here." After settling in, I went downstairs for breakfast. Darla's Diner just across the street smelled like bacon, coffee, and fresh biscuits, the kind of smells that remind you of home, even when your home has turned cold and indifferent. I slid onto a stool at the counter, and Darla herself, a plump woman with laughter lines etched deep into her face, greeted me. "First time in Willow Creek, honey?" she asked, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of me. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, letting my hands wrap around the warm mug of coffee. "Well," she said, leaning in like she was about to share a secret, "you picked a fine time to come. Life's easier when you let people see you need 'em. And sometimes it takes a stranger to remind you that you still deserve warmth." I smiled, the corners of my eyes stinging a little. Thank you. Ma'am, I think I'm ready for that. She winked at me and went to check on another table, leaving me with the morning light streaming through the window, warming my face, and my own thoughts drifting like clouds. For the first time since leaving my family, I felt safe, seen, acknowledged. But even in this quiet, even with the gentle kindness of strangers, the echo of Marcus's words lingered. Stop with the drama. Just send the password. I swallowed hard. That boy had no idea what he'd lost when he lost sight of me, no idea how deep the love of a mother runs, or the grief that comes when it's taken for granted. And still, as I sipped my coffee and listened to the clatter of plates, I whispered quietly to myself, this is just the beginning. I will find my peace. I will be seen. And maybe one day, maybe even he'll understand. For the first time, I let myself believe it. The days in Willow Creek settled over me like a gentle quilt, soft, warm, and forgiving. I started each morning at Darla's diner, letting the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh biscuits remind me that some comforts could still exist, even after heartbreak. I walked slowly down Main Street afterward, waving at shopkeepers, breathing in the air that smelled faintly of pine and possibility. But baby, let me tell you, the ache in my chest didn't leave just because the scenery changed. No, it stayed. It lingered like a shadow, whispering reminders of what I had lost. I spent my first week exploring the town, meeting the folks who looked like they'd grown up here, learned here, and would probably die here. Everyone had a story. A laugh tucked in their pockets, a burden they carried quietly, and slowly I began to feel part of it. Not completely, mind you. I wasn't ready to let the past go entirely, but the people of Willow Creek were kind in a way that made you feel noticed without demanding your whole life in return. One afternoon, I wandered into a little bookstore tucked between a coffee shop and a florist. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside, and a young man with round glasses looked up from behind the counter. "Hi there. First time here?" he asked, a shy smile on his face. "Yes," I said softly, brushing a strand of gray hair behind my ear. "I just moved to town." "Welcome," he said warmly. "I'm Peter. Can I help you find anything?" I shook my head. "Just browsing." But as I moved through the narrow aisles, the scent of old paper and ink wrapped around me like a warm hug. I picked up a collection of poems by Maya Angelou and held it to my chest. Something about the words reminded me of the life I'd built, the love I'd given, the patience I'd carried, the lessons I'd taught, and how invisible it had all felt to the people who should have mattered most. I didn't realize I'd been standing there for nearly 20 minutes until Peter cleared his throat. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I blinked, startled. "Oh, yes, just thinking." He nodded, as if he understood that some thoughts can weigh more than 100 pounds. "Take your time. The world will wait for you to catch your breath." And baby, that hit me deep. Sometimes you forget that the world doesn't care if your heart is breaking, it keeps moving, oblivious to your pain. But here, in this quiet little bookstore, I felt like someone finally noticed me. Not Marcus, not Alicia, not anyone from my old life, but a stranger. Someone who didn't owe me anything. After leaving the store, I walked back to the inn and sat on the small bench outside, my hands resting on my lap, my suitcase beside me. I let myself breathe for the first time in months. But then, a thought crept in like a shadow. What if Marcus never notices? What if he never realizes what he lost? The truth cut sharper than I expected. That boy, my son, didn't know how much I loved him until I was gone. And maybe, baby, some lessons have to be learned the hard way. I closed my eyes, feeling the late afternoon sun warm my face, and whispered a prayer, not for Marcus, not for Alicia, not for anyone but myself. Lord, help me carry this pain without letting it break me. Help me remember my worth, even when the people I love don't see it, and teach me how to live again. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees lining the street, like the town itself was listening. I knew then, without doubt, that leaving my old life behind had been the hardest, bravest thing I'd ever done. But it was also the only way I could ever start living for me again. And though my heart still ached for the family I left behind, I felt the tiniest spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope that one day I would heal. Hope that one day I would feel seen. Hope that one day even Marcus might understand. But for now, this was my chapter, my life, my story to reclaim. Morning came slowly in Willow Creek, and baby, I swear, it had a way of stretching out time that made you feel both small and infinite at the same time. The sun peeked over the rooftops of the quaint little town, casting a soft, golden glow that warmed the streets and the faces of folks walking to their jobs or delivering papers. I sipped my coffee on the front porch of the Maple Rose Inn, wrapped in my lavender sweater, feeling like I had finally found a place where the world wasn't too loud and my heart didn't have to fight for every beat. Yet even in this newfound quiet, the old pain clung to me like a shadow. Marcus, Alicia, my home, my life before this town. I couldn't help thinking about that message again, his casual words, the way he reduced years of devotion to a simple request for a Netflix password. It stung worse than any argument we'd ever had. And baby, it's strange how the smallest things can cut deeper than the biggest betrayals. I spent the morning walking down the main street, greeting shopkeepers who began to remember my name, even as I tried not to let myself get too comfortable. Comfort was dangerous. It made you soft, vulnerable. And after everything I'd endured, vulnerability felt like stepping into a storm without an umbrella. Stopping at the small park near the center of town, I watched children chase each other around the fountain, their laughter pure and untainted. A young father held his little girl's hand, spinning her around until her giggles filled the air. For a fleeting moment, I imagined Marcus there, my little boy, running, laughing, still mine in the way only a mother's memory can hold them. I felt a lump in my throat. I pressed my hands against my chest and whispered, "I raised him right, didn't I?" The breeze picked up, tugging at the hem of my sweater, carrying the faint scent of pine and wildflowers. And as if the world itself had heard me, I heard a small voice call, "Excuse me, ma'am?" I turned to see a young boy, probably no older than 8, holding a crumpled flyer. "Are you new in town?" he asked, eyes wide and curious. "Yes, baby," I replied softly, smiling despite the ache in my chest. "I'm new here." He grinned. "My name's Jacob. My mom says we should welcome new folks." I chuckled, my heart warming just a little. "Well, Jacob, your mom sounds like a very wise woman." We talked for a few minutes. He told me about the local library where the best books were hidden, and about a little pond behind the school where frogs like to sing at night. I listened, and for the first time in months, I laughed genuinely, quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't try to cover the hurt, but somehow lifts it, if only for a moment. When he ran off to meet his mother, I stayed seated on the bench, letting the quiet of the park sink in. Willow Creek wasn't just a town, it was becoming a refuge, a place where I could exist without being invisible, where I could breathe without the shadow of my old home pressing against me. Yet even as hope stirred, a stubborn ache remained. Leaving Marcus behind hadn't erased the love I felt for him, or the disappointment, or the longing to be needed, to be seen. It hadn't made me forget that he had once been my whole world, and in one careless moment he had almost shattered it. I closed my eyes and whispered to the wind, "Lord, teach me patience, teach me how to let go, even if my heart never fully forgets him." And baby, in that quiet moment, with the sun warming my face and children's laughter floating in the air, I felt the tiniest seed of something new take root, the beginning of peace. Not complete, not perfect, not yet, but a start. Even though Willow Creek was small, life here moved in its own rhythm, slow and forgiving. I began to notice patterns, like the way the diner always smelled like coffee and fried eggs in the morning, or how the town librarian always had a kind word for anyone who stepped inside. I took comfort in these little routines, like they were gentle reminders that life could still offer warmth, even when your heart felt battered. But baby, even in this haven, the ghosts of my old life followed. I couldn't walk down the street without thinking of Marcus. His laughter used to echo in my ears. Now all I heard were the echoes of my own thoughts. That boy had been my heartbeat for so many years, and now he was just a memory I couldn't hold close enough. One afternoon, I decided to visit the local library. I wanted to lose myself in something familiar, something safe. The scent of old paper and polished wood enveloped me as I walked in, and the soft murmur of other visitors felt soothing, almost like a lullaby. I wandered between the stacks, fingers grazing the spines of books I couldn't even read fast enough to fully take in. "Looking for anything in particular?" a voice asked. I turned to see Peter, the young man from the bookstore, the same shy smile, glasses slightly crooked. "Just something to distract me," I admitted. He nodded as if he understood. Sometimes distraction is the best medicine. He handed me a small book of poetry, saying softly, "This one helped me when I felt invisible." I held the book against my chest, feeling the weight of its pages. "Invisible," I whispered. That word, that very feeling had chased me for years, from my son's indifference to my daughter-in-law's coldness. I had left my home to be seen again, but part of me wondered if invisibility was something I would carry forever. Peter smiled and gave me a small nod, walking away to help another visitor. I sat down at a nearby table, opened the book, and let the words wash over me. The poems were tender, raw, and honest, reminders that even in solitude, a heart could still speak and still be heard. As I read, my mind drifted back to the first week in Willow Creek, to Loretta and Darla, to the little boy Jacob in the park. Even if my son couldn't see me, even if my family treated me as though I'd never existed, here were people who acknowledged me, who saw me. It was small, baby, but it mattered. Still, as much as this town began to feel like home, I couldn't ignore the ache. The ache of being unneeded. The ache of a son who had forgotten the woman who had loved him unconditionally. I wondered if Marcus ever thought about me, even a little, or if I had been erased entirely from his memory. I closed the book and rested my chin in my hands, staring out the library window at the quiet street. I realized then that life wasn't about waiting for those who left you behind to notice. Life was about carving out a space for yourself, even when it felt lonely, even when the world seemed indifferent. I whispered a prayer under my breath, steady and deliberate. "Lord, help me find my place in this world. Show me how to live again, even if it means doing it alone, and maybe, just maybe, teach me how to forgive the ones who never understood my love." The words felt heavy, but somehow necessary. I had to forgive, not for Marcus, not for Alicia, not for anyone else, but for me, for my peace. I left the library that afternoon feeling strangely lighter. The sun had begun to dip low, casting a golden glow over the town, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope that life could be gentle, even after betrayal and heartache. Yes, my heart still ached. Yes, my son still hurt me in ways he may never understand. But baby, I was learning to carry the pain without letting it define me. And that, I realized, was the start of something powerful. Evenings in Willow Creek were quiet in a way that felt like the town itself was holding its breath, giving space for reflection and healing. I'd sit on the bench outside the Maple Rose Inn, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops, the soft amber light bathing the streets in warmth. Baby, those moments were the only time I allowed myself to think without the rush of guilt, without the echo of Marcus's careless words, without the weight of Alicia's cold stares. But even in this new peace, the past still whispered. I remembered the night I left home, the suitcase packed with trembling hands, the bus pulling away as my heart broke in ways I hadn't thought possible. I thought about the years I poured into that house, The meals, the school projects, the love I gave, the tears I held back. And now, Marcus hadn't even paused long enough to ask if I was okay. Just the Netflix password. A sigh slipped from my lips. I hadn't realized I'd been holding it in all day. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves above me, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel it fully. The betrayal, the hurt, the longing. I let it wash over me like a tide, heavy and relentless. A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. "Evening, ma'am." I looked up to see Loretta, the woman who had first welcomed me to this town, carrying a basket of fresh bread. "Thought you might like something warm before dinner," she said, smiling kindly. I took the basket, my hands trembling slightly. "Thank you, baby. You have no idea." She nodded, understanding without needing to be told. Sometimes kindness is all a person needs to remember they still matter. Her words lingered as she walked away, leaving me with the bread and the warmth of human connection. I unwrapped a piece and took a small bite, feeling the comfort seep into me. And in that moment, I realized something important. Family doesn't always have to be the people you're born to. Sometimes, family is the people who see you, who acknowledge you, who stand beside you without judgment. I thought about Marcus again, my chest tightening with a familiar ache. That boy had been my world, and I had given everything I had to him. But now he was learning life in his own way, blind to the sacrifices I'd made, blind to the love I had poured into him. And baby, it hurt like fire. I set the bread aside and rested my hands in my lap, staring at the street below. Willow Creek was quiet, but it was alive. The lights in the shop windows flickered on one by one, the soft hum of cars on the road, the laughter of children from a nearby yard. Life moved forward, indifferent to my sorrow, yet offering its quiet beauty all the same. I whispered a prayer, shaky but honest. "Lord, help me find peace with what I cannot change. Teach me to let go of the hurt I've carried, to forgive the ones who have forgotten me, and to embrace the life I am beginning to live here. And maybe, help me find love again in small, unexpected places." As the sun fully set, casting shadows across the town, I felt a strange sense of determination. My past, my broken family, my abandoned hopes, my son's indifference would not define the rest of my days. I had chosen to leave, and in doing so, I had chosen myself. I took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill my lungs. The ache in my chest remained, yes, but it no longer weighed me down. It was simply a reminder that I had loved deeply, that I had lived fully, and that I was still capable of hope. I smiled softly, the first real smile in days. Baby, maybe this town, these quiet streets, and the people in it could become my second chance. And I whispered to myself, steady and firm, "I may have been forgotten, but I am not finished. Not yet." The days in Willow Creek had begun to settle into a rhythm, a gentle cadence that made my heart feel lighter with each passing sunrise. I woke each morning to the smell of coffee and toast from Darla's diner, greeted the same familiar faces on Main Street, and even began to recognize the little quirks of the townspeople, the way Mr. Henderson waved from his porch, the way children chased each other around the fountain, the soft bark of a dog that seemed to follow me wherever I went. Baby. It felt like the first time in years that the world was soft enough for me to breathe. Yet even with this newfound comfort, the weight of my old life never fully lifted. I still thought of Marcus, my son, my boy, my heartbeat for so many years. The memory of that text, the one asking for a Netflix password, still burned in my mind. He had no idea how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed, and how much I had loved him. That casual indifference cut deeper than any harsh words ever could. One afternoon, I decided to walk along the outskirts of town, where the fields stretched wide, and the wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. I found a little bench beneath an old oak tree, the kind with sprawling branches that seemed to hold up the sky itself. I sat there, hands resting in my lap, eyes tracing the horizon where the fields met the mountains. For a long time, I just sat, listening to the wind, the rustle of leaves, and the distant chatter of children playing. Then, as if the world itself had decided to speak, a soft voice called out, "Excuse me, ma'am?" I turned to see a young woman approaching, pushing a stroller with a tiny infant bundled inside. Her eyes were tired, her smile hesitant, but there was something familiar in the way she carried herself, a mix of love, fear, and exhaustion that I knew well. "Hi," she said softly. I saw you sitting here and thought maybe you could use a friend." I blinked, caught off guard. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied. "Sometimes just having someone nearby is enough." We sat together in silence for a while, watching the fields sway in the breeze. "Baby, let me tell you, there was a strange comfort in being near someone who didn't ask for anything, who didn't need you to be anything but yourself." I thought about my son, about the years we had shared, and how different things might have been if someone had simply seen us both for who we were. Finally, the young woman spoke again. "I'm Kara. This is my little one, Lily." She smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips. "Sometimes life gets heavy, and you just need a quiet place, a little kindness, to remind you it's not all gone." I nodded, my chest tight. "Evelyn," I whispered, I understand more than you know." We talked then. Not about Marcus, not about Alicia, not about the past that still haunted me, but about simple things, the best spots to watch the sunset, the little bakery down the street, the rhythm of Willow Creek, and for the first time in weeks I laughed, a quiet, shaky laugh that felt like it had been buried too long. When Kara and Lily finally left, I stayed on that bench a little longer, letting the wind carry away some of the heaviness I had carried with me for so long. "Baby." I realized then that life could still offer warmth, even if it came from unexpected places, even if it didn't come from the people I had loved most. I whispered a prayer to myself. "Lord, help me cherish the kindness around me, help me heal, and help me see that even when the ones I love forget, there is still love to be found." As the sun dipped low over the fields, I stood, brushing the dust from my sweater, and felt a quiet determination settle in my heart. My life was not over, my love had not been wasted, and my heart, though still bruised, was ready to begin again. Baby, I knew then that no matter what Marcus did, no matter how cold the world could be, I had found my place. And in that place, I could finally breathe. The morning sunlight spilled over Willow Creek like a promise, soft and golden, and I breathed it in as if it could somehow wash the last remnants of my old life away. I had been here for weeks now, learning the rhythms of this small town. The kindness of strangers, the peace that came from walking slowly, from living without the constant ache of being overlooked. Baby. I had discovered something powerful. Life doesn't always give you the people you want, but it does give you the places, moments, and connections that can mend what was broken. That morning, I walked down Main Street with a sense of quiet purpose. The streets were alive with chatter, the clink of coffee cups, the laughter of children racing past the flower boxes. I greeted everyone I passed, and each nod, each smile, felt like a thread stitching me back together, slowly but surely. The ache in my chest was still there. Oh, it was, but it had softened into a dull thrum, no longer sharp enough to paralyze me. I stopped by Darla's diner for breakfast, as I always did, and Darla herself waved me over. "Good morning, Evelyn. You're glowing today," she said, sliding a plate of eggs and bacon toward me. I smiled, feeling warmth bloom in my chest. "Morning, Darla. I guess I just feel a little lighter today." "You deserve it, baby," she said, patting my hand. "You've been carrying a lot." I nodded, letting the gratitude settle over me. Baby, sometimes a kind word can be as healing as prayer, and today I felt both washing over me at once. After breakfast, I wandered toward the little park at the center of town, the place where I had met Jacob and sat beneath the old oak tree. It had become a kind of sanctuary for me, a place to breathe without fear, to reflect without judgment. I found the same bench and sat down, letting the morning breeze brush against my face, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. And then, I reached for my phone. Not to call Marcus. No, baby, I wasn't ready for that yet, but just to see if he had noticed. The truth had settled deep in my heart. Whether he realized it or not, I had made the right choice, but human hearts are stubborn, and mine still ached for recognition, for the boy who had been my everything. I unlocked the screen, and my heart stopped. A message from Marcus, not a demand, not a careless request, not indifference, but something I had longed to hear, though I had never expected it. "Mama? I don't know why I never noticed. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Can we talk?" Tears blurred my vision, but this time they weren't just for the hurt. They were for the love that had never truly died, for the motherly heart that had been ignored, and for the possibility of being seen again. I sat on that bench, phone trembling in my hand, and whispered to the morning breeze, "Lord, thank you." I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, letting the words sink in, letting myself feel the validation I had craved. And for the first time I realized that leaving my family wasn't just an escape. It had been a journey to reclaim myself. I had found kindness in strangers, laughter in small moments, and hope in the quiet rhythm of life. And baby, I had discovered that even when those we love forget us, life still has a way of showing us that we matter, that we are seen, that we are loved. The wind stirred, rustling the leaves of the oak tree above me, and I let it carry away the last remnants of fear and doubt. My heart was still tender, yes, but it was stronger than it had been in years, and as I sat there, I understood something simple and profound. Love doesn't die. It bends, it waits, it transforms, but it never truly leaves. I smiled, wiping my tears. "I'm ready now," I whispered. "Ready for whatever comes next." Baby, I had walked away to be seen, and in doing so, I finally found myself.